In this video, I'm going to walk you through the PwC interview process step by step. If you're preparing for job interviews at PwC or you're just curious about what the process is like, then this video is for you. All right, let's get started. If you're watching this video, then you likely already know that PwC is one of the 4 largest professional services companies in the world. And working at PwC, people often say not only changes your career, but also changes your life. And I remember my first impression of PwC. I was a college student just walking by a info session, and I remember this group of PwC grads, and I remember some of them because they were literally at my college, my classmates a couple of years earlier. And here there was something different about them. Not only were they well-dressed, but they somehow were well-spoken, had this aura of confidence, and they just knew as if they were happy to be where they were. And this applied to the consultants and also the other team members who were at PwC. And I thought to myself, why is that? When I started going through the application process for PwC, I started recognizing why this may be. And immediately I already knew that PwC was a place that actually emphasized a lot on developing its people and caring for its people. In fact, I remember as a candidate, when I was going through the interview process, they would actually fly me and my peers out. So this was before we even got the job offer, even before they thought that we were even good enough to be PwC material. They were willing to fly us out halfway across the country just to interview us. They were willing to pay for our taxis to and from the airport, put us in nice hotels, and then make sure that we were taken care of for that time. And this is all before we even decided if we wanted to work at PwC. And I thought to myself, if they're willing to do this for job candidates, what is it like to actually work there? And the more I started researching about PwC, the more I realized all the benefits of working at a firm like PwC. So what exactly are the benefits? Well, the first big benefit here is your professional growth is going to be exponential compared to other careers. And this is because PwC, as one of the largest professional services companies in the world, they have revenues that are larger than McKinsey, Bain, and BCG all combined. To put this in perspective, it means that PwC takes on a lot more different projects and clients. So as a PwC consultant, you're working on clients all the way from the banking industry, such as JP Morgan, all the way to food and beverage, like Domino's Pizza. So you have a chance to be able to develop skills that you can't develop anywhere else. And the second is not only are you learning, but you're also getting paid. So PwC is among the top 5% of payers around the world. Just imagine that, being out of school and you're already being paid more than 95% of the world. That's an incredible statistic. But besides the pay and the professional development, there's also the brand that carries with you for the rest of your life. PwC is one of those brand names, especially in the business world, that people just know about and respect the fact that you come from there. And that's because PwC has its mark in the business world almost everywhere. PwC has over 700 offices across 150 countries. And across those 150 countries, they employ over 400,000 people. To put that in perspective, 2.5 times larger than McKinsey, more than 3 times larger than BCG, and almost 4 times larger than Bain. And beyond the brand name recognition, you also get a fourth benefit, which is the exit opportunities, especially if you're continuing in the business world, are enormous. So for example, alumni at PwC have gone on to become the CEO of Delta, as well as the CEO of TikTok. But it's not just about being CEOs of existing companies. Alumni at PwC have gone on to found companies such as BlackRock and Nike. So you're joining an impressive group of alumni to continue in the business world. So I've shared with you a lot of benefits of working at PwC, but before you can get those benefits, you actually have to get the job at PwC. So how do you actually do that? So luckily, the process at PwC is actually pretty straightforward. There's only 4 things you have to do. First, you have to apply. Second, you have to pass the online assessments. Third, you have to pass the first round interviews. And fourth, to get your offer, you have to pass the final round interviews. Let's go into what each of those processes mean. The first thing is you have to apply to PwC. If you're a student, this means just uploading your resume, your cover letter, and your academic transcript. And you can do this either through your career center or through the PwC online portal directly. If you're someone who's out of school, also known as an experienced hire, then you would just apply directly to the PwC site, and you would just upload your resume and your cover letter there. And depending on what roles are actively hiring, you can usually hear back within 7 to 14 days if you pass the application process. After you pass the application process, PwC will then invite you to the online assessment. This is where PwC wants to give you an online assessment and see if you have what it takes to potentially be a PwC employee. And as you're going through these assessments, PwC actually has 3 types of assessments that you could be going through. You're not gonna have to go through all of them, and some people actually don't have to go through this at all. But if you do get these are the 3 common ones you can expect. The first is a numerical reasoning and logical reasoning. So this is where PwC just wants to see how you make decisions and how well you work with numbers. The second type of assessments are video interviews. This is where PwC has already selected a number of questions that I want to ask you, and they're going to ask you to record yourself answering these questions. The third type are mini cases, which is they're going to give you a business situation and ask you to solve and reason your way to a solution. So if all these terms are new to you, or if you're preparing for the online assessment, don't worry. I actually have a video where I cover all these in more details. So I'm going to link to that in the description below. So if you are going to the online assessment, don't worry, I'm going to cover this in more detail in that video. After you make it past the online assessment, or maybe you were able to bypass the online assessment because you weren't required to take one, you enter the first round interviews. In the first round interviews, what ends up happening is you have a series of interviewers. They can range from analysts who had just just joined the firm a year ago, or they could be senior partners who've been at the firm for decades. What they're going to do is they're going to put you through a series of interviews, usually about 3 to 5 of them, and see if you have the potential to be a great future hire for PwC. And when you get into the interviews, what you can expect are 2 types of interviews: case interviews and behavioral interviews. Case interviews are when you're given a business situation and asked how you think through it. So for example, if your client is trying to cut costs, how do you think about what costs to cut? And then the interviewer wants to know how well you think and what logical conclusions you come to. The type of interview questions that you're going to encounter will depend on the branch of the PwC family that you interview for. So there are 2 main branches when it comes to the consulting route that you need to know about. The first is PwC Consulting. So PwC Consulting is known for their technology implementation, their practice within mergers and acquisitions, their organizational redesign, and their digital transformation and strategy focus. So as a result, you can imagine you're going to get a case focused on one of these. Depending on if you're applying for a generalist role, you might encounter multiple ones of these, or if you're applying for a specialty such as digital strategy. The second branch of consulting at PwC is the Strategy and Group. The Strategy and Group is known for their focus on growth projects, cost-cutting projects, and operational efficiency projects, which is making operations more streamlined and better. So you can imagine if you're applying for Strategy and within this generalist practice, you can encounter cases that range from how to grow a company, how to cut costs, and how to make a company more efficient. But if you're focused on a particular team within Strategy and, for example, let's say that you're within the growth team that deals with deals and mergers and acquisitions, then you can encounter more acquisitions and merger type cases. So I want you to keep that in mind. But regardless of what branch of the PwC family you apply to, there's 5 things that PwC looks for. They are: first, can you be a leader within the firm? Second, do you have the knowledge or ability to gain business acumen? This means that you don't have to come in being the world's most expert in business or even have an MBA, but you have to have a willingness and ability to be able to learn those skills. Third, will you be able to create value for clients? Fourth, are you open-minded? And fifth, are you able to build and maintain deep relationships with others? So regardless if you're applying to PwC Consulting or Strategy and, you're going to be evaluated on those 5 criteria. But don't worry if you're new to case interviews. I'll provide a link below where you can get started on learning how to master the case interview process. The second type of interview you'll encounter at PwC are called behavioral interviews. And there's 2 reasons why firms like PwC will use behavioral interviews. PwC likes to complement their case interviews with behavioral interview questions. This is because they want to know how well you'll be able to fit into the firm. So they might ask questions such as, why consulting and why PwC in particular? The second reason why interviewers like to ask these questions at PwC is they want to know how you would handle certain situations by understanding how you've dealt with similar situations in the past. So for example, if you had a disagreement with a team member or a former boss, how'd you handle that conflict? And by the way, if you're preparing for interviews at PwC, I'd love to help you even more. You can book a free call with my team to see how we can help you land your PwC offer. I'll provide more details in the link below. All right, let's go back to the PwC process. After you complete the first round of interviews, and if you pass it, you'll be invited to come back for the final rounds. Here I use the word final round to represent all the rounds that happen after the first. So you might just have 1 more day of interviews, or you might have several more days of interviews, but just know that the name is just to encounter everything that happens after your first round. And at PwC, final rounds are quite the endurance test. In fact, you might be invited to what's called a super day if you're in the US, or an assessment center if you're in Europe. And let me walk you through what these are. So a super day or assessment center is where PwC will invite you for a full day interview with them. And this will be usually at a PwC office. You can encounter a variety of different interviews, but on average, you can expect 2 behavioral interviews, 1 to 2 standard case interviews, and 1 group case interview. And in addition to the super day, the final type of assessment that you might encounter at PwC for your final round is what's called a case presentation. This is where PwC is going to give you a packet of information, call it a case file, and they're going to ask you to prepare a presentation based on that through PowerPoint. And you're going to be invited to actually walk you through your analysis and then answer some questions from your interviewers. So think of it as almost a demo of what you would actually do on the job. I actually personally find that really fun, but if you're nervous about it, we have resources on that as well. But just know that that's one thing you might encounter with the PwC interview process. And after your final round interviews, you'll hear back usually within a week. Sometimes it'll take a little bit longer depending on the timeline, but one of 3 things will happen. Either outcome 1, they decided not to move ahead and basically is a rejection. The second thing is the firms aren't sure yet. They might invite you back to interview again to get more data points, or they might say, hey, let's hold off. We want to interview a couple more candidates, and if we can't find a better candidate, we'll hire you. They won't say exactly like that, but you're basically going to be on a wait list. And then the third outcome is they really enjoyed working with you and they want to extend a contract to you. In that case, congratulations, you've been given a contract to PwC. Now that you know how the PwC interview process works, I want to leave you with one crucial piece of advice. So this is advice that's going to exponentially increase your chances of landing an offer at PwC. So I really want you to take this in because I've seen so many people mess this up. The advice is this: when you're applying to PwC, keep track of two things: which branch of PwC you're applying to and which city you're applying to. The reason for this is that oftentimes I see candidates who apply, let's say, for example, to PwC Consulting in Atlanta, and they happen to have a friend who is in the strategy and office in London, and they get advice from their friend who's in strategy and at PwC in London, and their expectations aren't the same as what the person who's applying in the United States will hear. So the advice I have for you here is really think about where you're applying to and which branch, and make sure that you have the information here, because if you don't do this, you're gonna be preparing for the wrong thing. And if you're preparing for the wrong thing, it's like as if you took a class and then used a different textbook than the class that you're taking. So definitely don't make that mistake. But when you take this advice, it's gonna exponentially increase your chances of landing an interview and eventually an offer at PwC. And I wanna do two more things actually before we end the video to help you even more. The first thing is that if you're recruiting for PwC, I'd love to give you more free resources to help you land that interview and land that offer. All you have to do is just comment PwC below and I'll send you those resources. And the second thing is that if you're 100% serious about becoming a management consultant, I'd love to see how my team and I can help you. Here at my consulting offer, we're a team of former recruiters, consultants, and interviewers who have helped over 800 people land jobs in management consulting. If you're serious about becoming a management consultant, I'd love for my team to meet you. You can actually book a free call with my team to see how we can help you land your offer at PwC or another amazing consulting firm. All you have to do is just click the link below to book a free call with my team. And we'll share with you the exact process we've used to help 90% of the people who reach out to us land their offer. But 90%, you might be thinking, wow, Davis, is that real? Well, I don't want you to take my word for it. In fact, I want you to hear from Sunny's son, who actually used our program, came from a non-target school, had a low GPA, didn't have business background, didn't have internship experience, and he ended up landing his dream offer at PwC. So I'll link to his video somewhere above my head so that you can actually watch his story, and he'll walk you through how he went from someone with a low GPA, no business background, from a non-target school, and how he ended up working at PwC, and eventually where he is today. All right, I'll see you in the next video.